Hi, and in this video it's going to be completely different to my normal content. So if you're one of my usual subscribers, you'll be thinking, okay, so what's this one going to be about, Phil? Well, it's not going to be about World of Warcraft, which is my normal content. This is about YouTube. It's a general one that may be of interest to anyone who is interested in the way YouTube do things. This is the first time I've ever done a video like this, so if you enjoyed this video or find it useful, it's not one that I'm going to say, please subscribe, like, and all the rest of it, because in actual fact, this is just an aberration. It's just a separate thing. Normally, of course, I mean, YouTube very commonly change things. Of course they do. Lots of business, especially when they want to grow, will sort of keep changing things. Hopefully, you know, not mindlessly. And obviously the large YouTubers will talk about them quite a lot, and I'll watch them. And sometimes I'll agree and sometimes I'll disagree. But I don't really feel the need to add anything else in because I've not got anything else to add. On this particular occasion, I feel I do, because both of the things I'm going to talk about in this video, bigger YouTubers have been talking about, and the ones I've been looking at have all been basically saying the same thing. And I think I have a slightly different perspective. It's not that I downright disagree with them. It's just that I think I just have a slightly different perspective on it. And the reason I've called this the 4 pillars of YouTube, I shall explain in a moment. But first of all, it's really related to the general, the very simple business model. I'm not going to bore you with details about business models because, of course, I'm not a business expert anyway. This is just someone who's got an inquisitive mind and wants to talk about the way it sort of seems to work. Now, I'll compare it with a more familiar type of business model. Now, if we compare it to, say, a supermarket. So if we think about 3 of the key groups of people involved in a supermarket being successful. So you have the supermarket itself, as in the business, the people who work there, and they work there for wages, so they've got their money to live on. You've got the people who own it, shareholders and the like, who, of course, want that supermarket to make lots of profit so that they can have a nice dividend. And again, it's about them getting money to support their lifestyle. So we also have customers. Customers want to be able to buy the products that they want. And of course, supermarkets have helped that by diversifying and selling more than just groceries these days. There's also, you can get tellies and computers and all sorts now. And that, again, that benefits the customers, also benefits the supermarket, more business. And then you've got the producers. Well, the producers want to sell their products. And again, you could say, in a way, it's quite handy having supermarkets because it means they can sell all of their produce to one customer who will then pass it on to their customers. It's better than selling your produce to lots of different companies. Now, that's the extent to which those 3 groups are aligned. In many ways, they are not at all aligned in their interests. The supermarket, for example, wants to make maximum amount of money. In order to do that, it needs to pay the producers as little as possible and the customers to charge them as much as possible and to get them to buy as much as possible. And if we look at the customers first of all, the way they do that is by, certainly in the UK, they put deals on. They used to put what were called bog-off deals, which is buy one, get one free. They tend not to be allowed to do that anymore, I think. I can't remember whether it's a hard, definitely not allowed to do it, or they're encouraged not to do it because the government threatened to legislate. I'm not sure which one. But you tend not to see those now. But you see something very similar instead. So a product costs, say, £1.50. And you say, well, you can buy 2 for £2. So it's not quite buy one, get one free, but it's getting them. So you might only want to buy one of these things, but you look at it and you think, well, it's a third of the price again to get another one. So I'll just get 2. So the supermarket's getting you to buy 2 of something you only wanted 1 of. So they're getting you to buy more stuff. They're getting more money. And then the usual trick, I mean, this is as old as houses, that you put like sweets and stuff like that near the checkout so that kids, you know, are going, oh, can I have some sweets? And some parents, of course, will go, no, you can't. But some will go, all right then. And then they've sold you another product. So they've got you to buy more stuff than you intended to buy when you went in. So supermarket has won. You have lost because you've got a load of stuff you didn't really need. You might have wanted it, but you didn't really need it. So you've spent more money. The supermarket's made money. So your interests there are not really aligned. And then there's the producer. There's frequent debates in the UK about farmers in particular having to sell their produce to supermarkets for lower than they ideally would like to, and sometimes at like very restrictively low prices, to the point where farmers are having a tough time of it, especially smaller farmers. And it's quite unfair. And you can think, well, why couldn't the farmers sell elsewhere? Well, there's nowhere else to sell to. Supermarkets basically have monopolies pretty much on this sort of product. So the producer and the supermarket, their interests are not generally really aligned either. Now, the YouTube business is different, at least in its simplest form, if we think about it. Now, I call it the 4 pillars of YouTube. What are those 4 pillars? First of all, what do pillars do? They support a structure. So what is the structure? I'm going to call that the YouTube business. There's 2 YouTubes in this. There's the YouTube business and there's the YouTube platform, the video platform. So one of those pillars is, of course, the video platform. Without that, without the ability for people to upload videos and to share them, you have no business model at all. So that's one of the pillars. Another one of the pillars are the content creators. Without the content creators, there are no videos to put on YouTube. YouTube themselves can't possibly be creating all the videos that would need to go on there to make the whole thing successful. So they need video creators. So that's another pillar. Then there's the viewers, people who watch the videos. Of course, if people aren't going to watch the videos, the content creators are not going to create them. Content creators are not going to create them. Then again, there is no video sharing platform. There's no videos for it. And finally, you've got the advertisers. They're the ones who provide the revenue to make the whole thing work and to make it all worth doing. And their interests are broadly aligned. It's quite simple, really. Video creators create content. They put it onto YouTube. That's a great place to get it out to everyone else. Lots of people watch it. They're able to monetize it. They get a certain amount of money if people are clicking on the ads. And that means eventually some content creators say, I'm making enough money off them, getting enough views and getting enough revenue that I can go full time. That allows them to do one of 2 things, or maybe both: make better quality content or produce more content. That again suits the customers, because now when they look up for content on something, they want to learn something, or maybe it's for entertainment, they can look at that and they think, oh, this is even better, this is helping explain it a lot better, or this is much funnier or more entertaining, or whatever it is. Better quality. That means viewers are more likely to go to YouTube as the go-to place whenever they want to find any of this sort of content. That helps everything, because that helps the content creators because they're going to get more views. That helps the viewers because they know there's one place to go to find out what they want. They don't have to go through lots of different platforms. It helps the advertisers because they then see YouTube as a place to base their marketing campaign around. It's a really good place to get your adverts seen. And of course, it helps YouTube because they are the go-to place for all of these groups, and therefore they become the dominant figure in the market. And it's all aligned. Everything's perfectly aligned. It's in the advertisers' interest that creators want to create lots of content and that lots of viewers want to watch it because their adverts get seen. It's in the viewers' interest because they've got one platform. If they want to find out anything, you just go onto YouTube. If you want a video tutorial, if you want to just see it in text, okay, you might just go to Google itself, the search engine. Well, that's still the same company. Win-win. But if you want to see it demonstrated, YouTube's the ideal format for this. So that's what you just know. You just go to YouTube and you can find out whatever you want. The content creators like it because that means there's lots of potential people looking for their content. Anyone who's looking for that sort of content is probably going to go to YouTube as their first port of call. So you're going to get more people viewing it, which means more dollary dues. And the next one for YouTube itself, of course, they become the dominant market one. They become the obvious place for all this money to come rolling in. They make more money. All perfectly aligned. It's brilliant. A couple of things. Well, one thing has thrown it a little bit out of alignment, and this is a situation where I think it would have been very easy for YouTube to realign it, but they've gone the opposite way. And there's another thing I want to talk about as well. The first thing is about ad-friendly content. Now, what this basically means, in a nutshell, if you're interested in this, you've presumably seen larger YouTubers talking about it anyway. What it means is if your content has like lots of profanity in it, or talks about like rape or other forms of violence, or like certain political views, any of this sort of stuff that could potentially be off-putting to an advertiser, then your video will not be monetized. It'll be demonetized. Now, there's 2 things that I can sort of attack on this one. What a lot of YouTubers have said is, first of all, they've talked about the issue of freedom of speech. Now, a lot of the YouTubers I've seen, some have been American, some have been from other countries, but we'll talk about Americans one principally because that's what I want to talk about, because it's an American company. I think it's most relevant to try and look at it from the US point of view. Now, people in America, of course, have a particular view on freedom of speech. It's sort of supposed to be enshrined. We know that sometimes people can be attacked. We've had various points in American history where people have not been allowed freedom of speech, but by and large, but that's usually a corruption of some sort of government or government officials or even at a local level. Generally speaking, you are supposed to have the right to freedom of expression, freedom of speech. So is doing this an attack on freedom of speech? So if you're somewhere who on YouTube vlogs about political events and throws your own opinions in, you're not trying to do it as an objective news channel, although how many news channels really are objective anyway, but you actually want to throw your opinions out there. You have your views and you want to express them. You don't actually want to be reasonable or objective, and that's fine. Is your right to freedom of expression being attacked? Well, on the one hand, you can argue, yes, it is, because if you have made a career out of this, and the only way you're able to put out the amount of content you do is because you've gone full-time because of the revenue, that's been taken away from you completely. So it means you'd only be able to do it in your spare time, and that means you wouldn't be able to do as much of it or as good quality. You could say that's an attack on your freedom of expression. The counter argument to that is that YouTube are not saying you can't put this content on YouTube. They're just saying you won't get paid for it. So they're dissuading you from doing it. Now, the other thing, and this is where my view is a little bit different to a lot of what major, especially US YouTubers have said, is that what YouTube are doing is not illegal, and therefore they can do what they want. I have a slightly different view. It may not be illegal. That could actually be fine. But here's the thing: if you are a citizen of the United States, you pay tax money, and some of that tax money goes to paying the president, to paying congressmen and women, and to paying senators. What's their job? What is their role? A lot of their role is to make sure that the views of the American people are enshrined in law. That means sometimes repealing laws that you think are a bit draconian and no longer part of modern America, and some laws don't exist. Some behaviours are allowed, and you say, actually, in today's modern society, we don't think this should be allowed, and you create laws to prevent it. Well, just because it's not illegal should not be the closing argument. The closing argument should be, should it be illegal? Now, you might have a debate and you might decide, actually, no, it shouldn't, because if we create a law to stop Google doing this, then there's all sorts of like various other things in which it could be perverted. It's better just to let them do what they want. But you might equally say, actually, we think Congress should get involved in this because this isn't right. This is an attack on our freedom of speech, our freedom of expression. This is an American company, and the American government should get involved. Yeah, but of course, that's not for me to say. I'm from the UK. It's nothing to do with me. But from a business point of view, I don't believe it makes sense. And here's why. Because it hurts the advertisers and it hurts the creators. And those are two of the pillars. And you only need one of these pillars to be significantly weakened, and the whole thing collapses. So what harm is it doing the advertisers when it's the advertisers who've asked specifically? Because what this is caused by is some top advertisers have had their adverts appearing on content that they might consider unsavoury. And what's really happened, it's not the advertisers that have got the beef with it. It's some customers have complained to those companies and said, why are your adverts appearing on this content? To which they've gone, well, we don't decide that. So they've gone to YouTube and said, well, we don't want it appearing on that. That's fair enough. And I haven't heard anyone say that the advertisers are unreasonable there. That's totally fair enough. No blame at all on the advertisers here. And they've talked about it as if it's just one of those things. It's really unfair, though, and maybe Google should do more. Google should do more, and it's not hard to do more. Because what are Google actually doing about this? They've created a bot. This is not people doing this, YouTube employees. This is a bot that automatically demonetizes content that seems to be flagged for, let's say, discussing rape, for example, because it's also demonetizing content which is rape support. You know, offering people advice if they've been victims or they might feel that they're victims, so prevention strategies or where to get help if you are a victim. And no reasonable person would say that should be demonetized, because that's not supporting rape. That's doing the very opposite. But it doesn't distinguish. And the other thing is, this is just some advertisers. There might be some advertisers who not only don't mind their adverts appearing on that sort of content, they might actively like it because they might think, well, the sort of people who like that sort of content are our customers. So you're hurting those advertisers as well. And that means that YouTube are actually, they're not just costing these creators money, they take a cut as well, remember? That's how they make their money. And so they're hurting them. So they're hurting themselves. So they're actually hurting themselves as a business and two of their essential pillars. So what's the solution, you ask? Well, surely it's simple. If you can have a bot that can search for all these different things, these features, why can't you just present advertisers with a tick box and say, tick all the types of content you don't want your adverts appearing on? And then you say to the creators, tick, like they can do a general one for their overall channel and then individual ones for individual videos if it sort of deviates a little bit. Tick all the things that are going to feature in your video. And then what happens is you're saying to these content creators, okay, if you want to do this sort of content, you can, and you can monetize it, but be aware that there's a lot of our advertisers don't want to be associated with it. So you're reducing the pool of potential advertisers. And that is very likely to have a negative effect on the revenue you can generate. But at least it's then their choice. Then everyone gets a choice. Everyone's rights are protected. The rights of the advertiser to not have their adverts appear on content that's at odds with their philosophy, which is perfectly reasonable. But also content creators can put out content within reason and still have it monetized, even if it's going to get a lower amount of money. Always, it seems perfect to me. And of course you could say, well, okay, people could falsify their declarations like the content creators. I mean, you'd still have the bot searching the taglines like it is now anyway as a backup, but that's fine. All you do is if you find someone has falsified something, if it seemed, maybe to begin with, just give them an initial strike, a little one, because maybe it was an oversight and they'll take it more seriously in future. But if they do it again, you give them a strike such that they can't monetize their content for a good amount of time. And then it's their own lookout. They should have been more careful. Wouldn't that work? Am I missing something? So that's on that side. And again, I don't think it's a good business because it hurts everyone. And it ultimately hurts the other two pillars as well, because it means if fewer people are putting content on there, or you're narrowing the range of types of content that can be on YouTube, then there's fewer people going to go to YouTube to search things. Someone else will spring up. The void will be filled. The niche will be filled by another company eventually. They won't keep their monopoly if they're going to, what's the opposite of diversify? I don't know, narrow, contract, whatever. And ultimately that just hurts the whole business model. Then there's the next one, which is even more destructive, which is the community heroes or YouTube heroes, whatever they're called. I can't remember. It's basically community moderators. Now, of course, lots of social platforms, eventually forum type things, will want moderators, people who are not themselves working as part of the organization, but volunteer their time to help moderate content. And it sounds fine. At its simplest, this is what happens. People who are willing to put into the time to, say, do transcripts for videos, for hearing impaired and things like that, earn points, and then they get, more access to tools such as mass flagging for content that's of an unsavory nature. And it all sounds, because you think to yourself as a reasonable person, well, that's fine, because we know the sort of content that crosses the line, it's either harassing people or it's inciting violence or something like that. And that content shouldn't be allowed. We sort of know that with freedom comes some responsibility. And if you're putting content out there that exists only to harm people, that's not nice. But that's not what's going to happen. What's actually going to happen, we know this is going to happen because there's groups of people already announced that they will do this, is you're going to have people who are going to use it to harass people. They're going to put the work in to be able to get these rights, and then they're going to go on a campaign of harassing people. Now, let's give an extreme example of this. So let's say you put in the time to become one of these YouTube heroes with a band of other people, and you yourself create content. Let's say one of the videos you put out is how to make a radio out of an avocado. And let's say someone else does the same thing. Now, let's say these are the only two videos on that subject, because let's be honest, how many people are going to do a video about how to make an avocado into a radio? So what you do is you use your power to downvote the really good content, the one that actually shows you how to do it. And yours is a bit crap. It just involves sticking an antenna in an avocado. Well, that's never going to work, is it? So someone comes along and they type in how to make an avocado into a radio, and they find this rubbish video because the good one's been basically downvoted because of the power of this hero. And they look at it and they think, this isn't helping at all. I can't get a signal on my avocado. So their perception now is, well, YouTube isn't as good as people say it is, because I've tried to find this thing. And yes, although I found a video on how to do it, it was a rubbish one. Hasn't helped me at all. YouTube's therefore rubbish. So you're reducing your customers, because what's happening is this system actively downvotes good content. Potentially. Because if the content wasn't good anyway, it wouldn't get lots of engagement from the normal viewer. The way the system works now is, okay, I'm not saying the best content always goes to the top, because, you know, lots of things count for the algorithm, you know, such as experience. The more you do it, the more likely it is to rise to the top. But generally, it's that engagement over time that eventually means that the better stuff will eventually get to the top, if you're committed enough as a creator. This works against that. So so you get lower quality content going to the top, potentially, even though that's not how it's supposed to work. And the other thing is, the content is entirely, the powers are entirely destructive. None of them promote good content. It's all about supposedly punishing what's unsavory content. But of course, that's in the eye of the beholder. It's subjective. These people could just do it with content. You know, someone says something they don't like, they normally put a dislike on it. Oh, well, now they can mass flag it as if it's really bad content. They've got that power. That's really bad. Surely that's really bad. And the other thing is, from a business point of view, is these heroes are not a pillar. They will never be a pillar. They don't support the model at all. They don't help anything. Because how do they help the YouTube business? How does it help the YouTube business to stop good quality content getting to the top for searches? It doesn't, because what happens is people searching for something are not getting that best quality stuff, so their view is slanted by that. They think to themselves, okay, now that video wasn't very good, so they go away with a negative view of the effectiveness of YouTube. That means fewer people watch YouTube videos. Content creators are less likely to do this, because those content creators, especially who are doing the good quality stuff, well, it's been downvoted. They're not getting anywhere, so they'll stop doing it. That means the ad revenue goes down. Everything goes down. Everyone loses. And everyone loses. So we go from a system where I've described YouTube as being a great freedom of our age, and it has been, and it still sort of is. It's just, it seems to be moving in a different direction, and it's been a great business model for two reasons. One, from a just an ethical point of view, it allows people the freedom to express themselves to the world in a way that wasn't possible before, because technology allows us to create reasonably professional looking things on a tight budget. Not a completely tight budget, but you don't need loads of money to be able to do it. And it's a really good social tool. At the same time, the business was also really good, because, as I say about these 4 pillars, I know it's a simplistic way of looking at it, but there's no reason for them not at all times to be aligned and to be able to support this business, because what is usually good for the advertiser is good for the content creators, is good for the viewers, is good for the YouTube platform itself, and good for ultimately for the business. And these two things stop those pillars aligning. They get them to pull against each other, just like Samson did, and we know what happened there. And that's, you know, my very real fear. Not for YouTube's welfare, because I don't know people who work at YouTube, but for the whole project, which has been a really great project, and one that I sort of was late to the party on, but those are my thoughts anyway. As I say, they're broadly in line with what a lot of big YouTubers have said, but with a slightly different perspective, I feel. So I hope you've enjoyed it. As I said, I'm not going to ask for people to like, comment, or subscribe or anything like that, because this is not my normal content. I don't expect to suddenly start talking about any little changes that happened with YouTube. It was just one that I felt I had a slightly different perspective, and thought I'd throw it out there. But thanks for listening if you got right to the end, and I'll see you later.